you want to call it today? You want to call it grab bag?
But no, I thought I already gave you a title.
I don't know if we can use that title. I think for SEO purposes, I try to keep expletives out of the actual title. But I like the enthusiasm. I like the energy, as always. I'll title it something clever after. But this is essentially you and I talking about the stuff we always talk about.
Yeah.
And typically when the mics aren't on, where I roll into some bar that you're sitting at and say, Jeff, why does the sun rise the way that it rises? Why does the wind blow the way that it does?
And I
And
say beautiful things like, Matt, the sun rises wherever you are.
that's true. That sounds sweet. Oh, look at all this love. Spring's here. We apply them to the rigors and the ins and outs of the hotel industry because
Mm.
you have done this for a long time. You know a lot about it. It's like you're my Google for all things hotel. You're like just this living supercomputer. So I'm going to take advantage of that supercomputer today and ask you some questions that have kind of vexed me over the last year as we've been doing this podcast. Let's just see what happens, shall we? Hi, everybody. It's No Show. I'm Matt Brown, joined as always by Jeff Borman. Jeff, I'll get the ball rolling. Question number one. We talk a lot about numbers on this show, and I need to do a better job when we interview guests because a lot of times we'll have hardcore hotel people, as I call them, the hotel folk. And when they come in, they just swim in statistics and numbers that the hotel industry knows very well, but that a lot of people outside of the industry, even if they're in travel, a lot of people might not be so familiar with, and they get flung around so quickly that it's like, whoa, what's he talking about again? So I want to talk about a specific number here, a secret number. I want to know what the secret number or stat is that hotel people really care about, either on the executive level or on the hotel ownership level, or if you're working the front desk.
Yeah.
What's the number that you kind of always have your eye on with a hotel?
Hotel people requires a little definition, I think. Owners of hotels care about cash returns, the profit that's left over after all the expenses. It either gets reinvested in the properties or it adds to the asset values or it gets returned to shareholders as dividends. Any of those things drive the value of the REIT or whatever investment form it's in. But uh, so I think the owner, it's just pure cash. But if you're asking the operator, or let's say the brands, right? Brands care about NUG, net unit growth. There's one for you that we should probably speak more than say NUG.
And what is NUG?
Just adding hotels. Last year you had 100 hotels. This year you have 105. Your NUG is 5 hotels. And that's the way brands grow, right? And I think if you remember back to when we had Zach on in January of this year, we really talked a lot about the business model for the biggest brands in hotels is not to grow through RevPAR, revenue per available room. That's kind of the standard bearer metric for the health of the hotel. But the brands really don't grow much on RevPAR. The owner might grow on RevPAR, but the brand really grows by planting a new flag. Do you have 10 Marriott hotels in Pittsburgh now? Do you have 13 of them at the end of the year? That's really meaningful growth for the brand. Now, underneath NUG, driving factors and forces, metrics, guest satisfaction. You can't grow more hotels and fill them if guest satisfaction is not high, right? They're not coming back to Marriott or Hilton or Hyatt, remember. Your loyalty program growth. Those numbers are cited about as much as RevPAR anymore, it seems. Well, that's because as you expand your units from, in the Pittsburgh example, 10 to 13 hotels, you better have a huge and growing loyalty program to keep them all full. So, but I think it comes back to NUG if you're a brand, cash if you're an owner. But you gave the example too of a property manager. And that's probably the toughest situation to say there's a magic number because they are caught between those two. They need to deliver all the things that the brand cares about and all the things that owners care about. It's where the rubber meets the road. And I think actually, Matt, there was probably in the early days of COVID when we could all align on one metric. All sides could align on a number that was 30 or 40% occupant because below that mark, And it depended a bit on the class of hotel, but below 30 to 40 occupancy, the hotel could not be profitable and was better off to be closed. So that kills all parts of the food chain.
Do the hotel brands, do they like Nug? Let's just kind of reduce this down. They like Nug because A, there's a franchise fee that's paid to them.
Mhm.
And B, I would imagine if these are publicly traded companies, that your stock valuation goes up.
Both those are true. So if let's just say, you have one hotel and it makes $100, you can put as a brand manager immense effort into growing the top line, the revenue of that hotel. Let's say the natural growth in that market is 3%. You're going to grow from $100 to 103 this year. If you put incredible effort against the commercial acumen and success, maybe you grow instead of 3%, you grow 4%. That's a 25% outperformance of the marketplace. That's an incredible degree of outperformance. But if you're the brand, then you're looking at this and you think, okay, so RevPAR went from $103 to 104. It took all that effort to get another buck out of that. Whereas instead, I could put my effort into opening a neighboring hotel where I get credit for the next $100. And then you take the fees on that. So if the fees were 10%, well, out of the $100, you made 10 bucks. You take RevPAR to 104, you're making 10% of that number. But you open a neighboring hotel at $100, and all of a sudden you have doubled your franchise fees coming into yourself.
What's that tension like between the operator of the hotel and the brand? Because I feel like it can be palpable, but it's never spoken out loud. If you are one of 10 hotels in the Pittsburgh area owned by a particular brand, and I'm sure there are sub brands there too. So it's not like you've got like 10 Renaissance hotels all in the same area, but you've got the same kind of overarching big brand that owns all these sub brands, and they're all planted down in one urban area. They never talk about it publicly because they don't want to burn bridges. But doesn't that always frustrate hotel owners when a brand decides we're gonna go for Nug, we're gonna go for another flag to plant in the ground, and we're gonna do it 2 miles away from your hotel?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Yeah, I mean, if it were up to owners, so I mean, a lot of owners, most agreements that an owner has with a brand has a territorial jurisdiction to it that prevents a brand from putting, to your point of 10 Renaissances in a city. Uh, it'll have some territorial clause that protects the owner from there being another Renaissance too close by. But there are a million ways around it. Right. Instead of putting a Renaissance, you're just going to put, an autograph collection hotel. Soft brand can't stop that. Right. Um, Years ago, developers used to joke that when there was a courtyard every 5 blocks and Marriott ran out of room to put more courtyards, there was going to be a hotel between those two courtyards. And Marriott rightly wants to have it under a flag of its. And so they went out and bought AC. And that allowed them to put a hotel without compromising the territorial requirements that the owners of those two courtyards that were existing already had. So yeah, it's a cat and mouse game for sure.
But if you're a hotel owner, you don't have a lot. I mean, are there ever any closed door meetings where you kind of give it to the brand? Like, hey, man, I've been trying to be a custodian of this brand, and you're really screwing me by opening a whatever, some kind of comparable thing four
It
blocks down
can
the street.
it's difficult to show material impact. It is very possible, but it can be difficult. So you open that hotel 2 doors away or 2 blocks or whatever your market condition might be. Sometimes a mile is very close. If you're in Manhattan, a mile is irrelevant. But whatever it is, you have to prove as an owner that your business has been harmed. And from there, it gets really into the deep with lawyers figuring out uh, how to right the damages that have been done. You can mitigate fees. A lot of times, that's what the resolution would be. If brand and owner agree that on an annual basis, this is going to do $500,000 damage to the existing hotel. They may agree then that management fee at that existing hotel could be dropped from, and I'm making up numbers, 10% to 7%. an offsetting amount. But those things are usually negotiated in dark rooms with lawyers. In the end, the commercial people who are out there trying to make the best out of every property, you kind of just suck it up, deal with it, and move on.
To that point, here's question number two for the Jeff Bot 1000. Is the hotel market oversaturated in the US? Do we have too many hotels?
Uh, I think we got to go back to the first perspective, right? If you're saying from an owner's perspective, of course there are. We never want more hotels. The existing supply is too much. In fact, we should have a reduction in supply. And if you're talking to the brands, absolutely not. There is plenty of room for growth. Travel is gigantic, and there's not enough hotels anywhere ever. Uh, so the perspective is everything, Matt. Maybe what you're really asking is, you're in certain markets.
Hmm.
Right. I think we could get probably a less evasive answer if we think of certain places. Like, everyone, I think, would agree that San Francisco has too many room nights right now, or too many rooms, I should say, in inventory. Uh, there's just not enough demand into that city at this time to support it. No. We've seen since 22 several of the largest hotels in San Francisco completely close, like close forever. Goodbye. Maybe they'll become condos. Maybe they'll open up again as a hotel in another 10 years with a different owner and investor strategy when the market returns. But I think San Francisco hosts the Super Bowl next year, and that'll be about the first event where they'll actually wish they had those rooms back. But you're talking a 4-day event over the course of a decade. So I think San Francisco, you could come up with some other examples. The Rust Belt in general is growing too slowly to absorb supply. Existing businesses would be better off with a supply reduction. We're talking my homeland, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Buffalo, Indiana. Like, these places don't need more; they need less. Uh, Minneapolis, not really Rust Belt, but it never recovered from the George Floyd situation. It's kind of crazy. Uh, Portland, Oregon. You and I had a great conversation last fall about this. And despite being an outstanding city, it's still off the radar for too many travelers. They remember it as a place of homelessness, drug abuse, poor governance. And, even if there's some truth in that stuff, Portland's an awesome place. Uh, so, I mean, of those markets, I think, yeah, there's a real oversaturatedness to it right now. I'm probably most optimistic about Portland's return. The same formula that made it great years ago, I think, still exists. And it's just going to have to get out of people's recent memories that it was a trouble spot.
You live in Dallas right now. You lived in DC, the DC area for years, but you live in Dallas right now. And it seems like every time I'm in Dallas, essentially every other building is a hotel. It's like, maybe that's because, I'm there for conferences and, kind of flying in and out of DFW. And it's just, that's all kind of hotel land right there. But is Dallas oversaturated?
If it feels that way now, just wait, because it's the largest pipeline in all of the US. More
Why?
hotels are being built in Dallas than anywhere else.
Why is that?
Uh, Wildly successful economic city, honestly. A lot of businesses are moving to Texas. This number is a few years outdated, but I think 250,000 people were moving from the coast to Texas in earlier this decade, like annually. Uh, Businesses are moving here because it's a low tax environment. Um, it's very affordable. Your part-time home in Atlanta is very similar in that it is never-ending suburban sprawl, which personally troubles me quite a bit. But in New York City, your home now, there's not 1 square inch of undeveloped land. If you can get a hold of it, you can make something out of it, right? In Dallas, though, or in Atlanta, uh, where the downtown is just really in sad shape right now, they don't bother to repair and fix downtown Atlanta. You just build something else in Buckhead, or Midtown is now all the rage, or out in Cobb County where they just built the new Truist Stadium for the Braves. Downtown Atlanta is really suffering for that. Dallas, I think some locals who are very proud of their city would say that's happening. But as somebody who gets to see most of the top 25 cities in the U.S. on an annual basis, Dallas's downtown is not nearly degrading to that degree. It's a thriving place, but you also still have almost endless expansion across the plains. Yeah, Dallas has the biggest pipeline in the business in the U.S., and it's continuing to grow. Not only is it the biggest, it's growing at the fastest pace too in its pipeline. It's kind of crazy.
Let's switching gears here. Let's talk about Hawaii. We don't talk about Hawaii that much, and that should change. It relies so heavily on Asian inbound travel and has forever. I feel like everybody who goes there is Pacific Rim.
Yeah.
You're either taking a weekend trip from California somewhere, or you are coming from Asia, and you want kind of an American holiday, but you want something that's a little more accessible and a little bit closer. How's Hawaii doing in this kind of post-COVID Trump 2.0 landscape?
Uh, Hawaii is kind of a frustrating place, I think, because it continues to do self-harm. I mean, it's got enough things going against it without hurting itself in the process, too. You mentioned it relies very heavily on Asian inbound travel, really more specifically Japanese. A lot of Korean, but mostly Japanese. And Japanese travel to the island is still down 50% to pre-COVID. Uh, the yen being at its lowest value of the dollar since the 80s makes it extremely expensive to what used to be its biggest inbound market. Uh, of course, we don't want to go too deep into the saber rattling that's going on by our country right now, but we're not making people feel particularly welcome either. So it's the only state that has that kind of reliance on a foreign inbound market, and it's really feeling it. And where Hawaii has done a poor job, in my opinion, is that it was also the American poster child for over tourism, right? We don't want you tourists, and well, that's a really bad idea for a state that relies its entire economy on tourism. That's a really dangerous position to take. And now Hawaii is going to place a 10% tourism tax across the state. So I think it's a wildly bad time for that to happen. It's already extremely expensive. It always has been expensive to get to anyway. So they're going to add to that expense. And I really just don't see this going well. I think if you kind of want to give them one more hard blow, Hawaii segmentation wise does not do a lot of business travel, but it does have a considerable amount of government travel. And given what's going on with Doge and cuts and cuts and cuts and cuts, government is extremely down right now and also wildly unpredictable. So I think Hawaii's in a tough spot right now and will be for a while if it continues to chase away the hand that feeds it.
Let's see what else I have in my question bag here. Okay, so we talked about oversaturation. What is an underserved luxury market? What's a place that's ripe for more luxury hotels to come in and make some money?
Uh, Not the Caribbean.
Why is that?
There's way too much super expensive luxury hotel supply. It was too much before, and it's being piled onto. Every new opening comes at the cost of a finite amount of demand, essentially. Uh, Generally speaking, I don't like, at least as a long-term investor, relying on airlift. Like Hawaii, you can't drive there. If airlift is too expensive into a U.S. continental city, they can rely more on a drive market, on a domestic market. Caribbean doesn't really have that. And the other part in the Caribbean is, at least in the luxury segment, it's expanding so quickly exactly in that high-end segment, right? You're not seeing a lot of extended stay hotels and business hotels or convention hotels. So all the supply that goes into the Caribbean is beachfront resort, and it just dilutes the hotels that exist because every newer hotel is cooler and shinier and has more bells and whistles than the one before it. So generally speaking, I would love to see, it's impossible, of course, but a moratorium on luxury building in the Caribbean. Key West, and by the way, one last thing on Caribbean. Those are also, in many cases, economies that rely on tourism very heavily. Like the Dominican, 75% of GDP is from tourism. Aruba and St. Kitts and St. Lucia, right? Not many of those places have other thriving industries. So the more we expand the supply of hotels and the more it dilutes the earnings per key, the worse off those hotels will perform and the worse off the whole market will perform.
And does the Caribbean have mid-market anymore, or is Airbnb kind of taking a slice of that pie? I mean, can you
Yeah.
go and
Yeah.
stay in a? I wonder if people who don't want luxury
Hmm.
but they still want a Caribbean vacation. Do those people just go to Florida or they just go somewhere else? I wonder if the region has kind of in a strange way sort of priced out its middle.
Yeah. The Airbnb thing is a major problem. A market that I know well, St. Thomas. Uh, since over the last 10 years, St. Thomas has added 5,000 Airbnb listings. 5,000. In relation to hotel rooms, that's a tripling of the hotel supply if it were equivalent. Right? The island can't hold that. It doesn't have the labor force. And so it dilutes everything around. It dilutes the hotel earnings. It dilutes uh, the earnings for the local who wants to work. As people don't stay in hotels where they can gain employment. Instead, they're staying in Airbnbs where there's far less. Last thing to that, even though we're not really talking about housing markets, when 5,000 homeowners turn their places into temporary hotels through Airbnb or similar sites, it raises the price massively of home ownership or rent on the people who are on the island trying to serve these travelers. So, in an island like St. Thomas, it's almost impossible to get labor to the market because you can't afford to pay a bellman $100,000 a year. But that's what it costs to live on St. Thomas now that every former resident owner is pimping out their place on Airbnb.
It does seem like if you're going to make an argument for Airbnb in a place, it is something like a St. Thomas or St. John's because
Mhm.
it's especially for mid-market because there's a decent chance if you're going with family. It's the family vacation for a week, and we want a kitchen, and we want three bedrooms, and we maybe want a pool, and not so that you can't get those things sometimes in a hotel, but I don't see a ton of extended stay options down there, probably because there's just no space for those. So the house rental thing, I guess, makes sense there from a housing option. I know it doesn't. I know the hotel industry probably doesn't like it, but I
Well,
feel
actually,
like
nobody likes it except the 5,000 people who are renting their houses out and getting some cash for it. The labor force doesn't like it either. The restaurateurs don't want it because now these people have their own kitchens. Uh, the infrastructure that the island was built on over the last 75 years uh, depends on people flying in, staying in a hotel, and eating and drinking at local establishments. When they can just fly to your cousin Matt's house instead, that's a seat on the plane that does not turn into anything that generates revenue for the people who work there.
yeah, like exactly like a concierge. So the concierge lives. Everybody, what do we want to go to next? Let me see. Let me see. Okay, all right. Let's go back to hotel people. I talk about them like they're hobbits. Are hotel people?
We are
They're well dressed hobbits. I mean, the actual hobbits are pretty well
very
dressed
polite
too.
hobbits.
In fairness, we're talking a lot about it. Do hotel people are they gravitating to luxury? I feel like we just see a lot of stuff about luxury right now, like
Yeah.
more than ever. And I wonder if the industry is kind of gravitating to it because they're trying to figure out their niche to appeal to that audience, and that unless you're luxury or I mean maybe business, maybe extended stay, I feel like it's getting the most heat out of any segment in hotels. Is that fair?
If by heat you mean time in the media, I totally agree. I think everybody loves to talk about luxury.
Yeah.
It is sexy.
Yeah. And it helps sell the whole industry. Like even if you're not going to go stay in a luxury hotel somewhere, if you see an article about a luxury hotel, like that's the White Lotus, right? It's like, oh, Sicily, I should go to Sicily, even if you end up staying somewhere else.
Mhm. Exactly what I'm doing in 5 weeks. I'm going to Sicily and I'm not staying at that Four Seasons. And not because I didn't want to, but because it is impossible to book. You can have the same or similar conversation about a economy hotel. Most of the metrics will be about the same, but it's way more fun to talk about a Ritz-Carlton than a Fairfield Inn.
With all of this kind of economic turmoil right now, I mean, we haven't seen as much turmoil. It's the threat of turmoil. I think we live under every day. I wonder if that threat of turmoil is affecting luxury in some way, either on the construction side or on the purchasing side as a consumer. I wonder if people are pulling back right now on what they're spending on luxury,
Uh,
or if there's kind of a wait and see, or if it's kind of full steam ahead and the numbers look good.
So there's a price sensitivity across all segments right now. So luxury's feeling it. A little bit of a pullback in pricing. Where you lose pricing, you lose profit. Uh, I think luxury is going to be redefined over the next 10 years. It's happening now, but it takes a while for this to really change in enough consumer minds. The current crop of luxury brands are not just saturated, but they're commoditized, which is far worse. It used to mean something to say, I'm staying at the insert big global brand. It means less now. People are less, Gen millennials and Gen Z are more likely to talk about their stay with great passion at Urban Cowboy because it's so different. They can't wait to talk about it. And it's unique and different and Instagrammable. Uh, it's also harder to do. Oh, what is that? Where are those? Can I go find one? Oh, it's one of a kind. No, there are six of them. If that's right, we should have lion on someday. But if you want to stay at a Ritz-Carlton, it used to be the reserve of the elite, and quite honestly, now anybody can do it. Uh, so I think luxury is going to change into luxury and ultra luxury, and again, that's happening. Uh, you're the days of considering a 500 room hotel, regardless of brand, considering it to be luxury, I think that's gone. Right? Even in Las Vegas, where you've got some of the finest hotels in the world, I don't believe you can have a 3,000 room luxury hotel. Like my definition of luxury cannot be met with 3,000 guest rooms and what's required to service them. So
Well,
there's very little exclusivity in the luxury tier now. We saw numbers last year, like 1,000 hotels run over $1,000 ADR or something crazy. Right? That's no longer the definition of luxury. We got to get to the hotels that are $5,000 a night. No, let's talk about those. That's luxury, probably.
speaking of Vegas, as always, we have to bring up Vegas every other episode. It's in our bylaws. And also exclusivity. I've been thinking a lot about this over the last week because there was a story in the Las Vegas Review Journal about concierge desks closing at some major properties in Vegas. And, that there were a lot of pseudo think pieces that came after it. Like, is the concierge truly dead? And I think the reality is probably more complicated than that. I have a thought about it, but I want to ask you: is the hotel concierge gone?
No way. No, it's evolving. But when I started my career journey in the 90s, the internet was supposed to replace every concierge. That clearly hasn't happened. But it has taken away a lot of travel desks, right? That you used to see in some hotels where it's just someone with a bunch of brochures, not really an elevated concierge at a luxury hotel. But the travel desk that could be replaced by what's now, a mobile phone. A lot of that stuff's gone
Right,
away.
right. The concierge desk, I feel like devolved maybe isn't the right word, but it over the decades morphed into essentially an information desk.
Mhm.
And you'd maybe go to, maybe they do cab stand there too, and it's like, can you tell us which direction this restaurant's in? It wasn't this kind of a romantic idea of what a concierge is, where you go down there and it's like, hey, I need tickets to this impossible show, and I'm a guest at your hotel, and can you get them for me? It's like, yes, sir. And that I don't know if that ever existed for everybody, but I think hotels kind of looked at what that desk was doing, and then they also noticed that it was splitting that kind of labor up around all the people who work in the hotel lobby. The people behind the front desk can just as easily kind of handle those questions as like a dedicated concierge desk and probably do it more reliably. But it does, I mean, the high end concierge is probably still there for VIPs. I don't know who counts as a VIP anymore, but I'm sure when you're staying at a major property, let's stay on the Vegas example. Let's say you're staying at the Fontainebleau or, like the Conrad and Resorts World. I'm sure if you're some kind of roller, high roller, there's a number they give you. And it's not just an app. Maybe the app is part of it. Maybe it's like a luxury kind of app too that maybe gets you special things. But there has to be like still a personal concierge. And you call him and that person gets stuff for you, makes things happen, right? Or is that fantasy?
I think that's totally right. The experiences are growing in importance. Now, you'd could say that that's the reason people traveled, leisure travel anyway, right? And let's take it this way. Like by segment, group travelers. If you're a conventioneer, you're probably not using the concierge very heavily, right? You're going to your meetings, you're going to the dinners that are pre-planned. You kind of know what your ins and outs are. Uh, if you're a business traveler, largely very similar, right? What time is my meeting and what room is it in? Um, the experiences are what drive leisure travel. And that is becoming increasingly important. Right? And you see this whether it's through M&A, $1 billion transacted earlier this year on just experiences tech platform, right? So the investment side of travel is going very heavily into experiences, which is right in your concierge area. I think the question isn't, at least to me, whether or not that is at the forefront or whether it's augmented by the human. And I think the human in the luxury experience is still going to be the critical go-between. I can make a reservation on Open Table, but to know what to order, what's not to miss there, I want that experience with the concierge who says, try this, it's off menu, or ask for this person. He's the Psalm, and he will let you know which cab he has in the back that's not on the menu, and tell him I sent you. Right? There's no AI function that's going to deliver that, but the concierge who can create better experiences is going to win out in every scenario. I think this is kind of like we talked to someone about travel agencies being one of the top three jobs most likely to be replaced by AI, travel agent or advisor. OTAs were supposed to do that too. They did not, right? But what they did is they took a lot of volume out of the travel agency world. But the volume they took was that purely transactional stuff. Make the reservation. What they evolved into as travel advisors was depth of local knowledge. Things it would take you months to research and have the kind of knowledge that my specialist at Audley for Sicily has gained through 10 years of traveling to Sicily and travel and doing thousands of trips for other people. I can't get that any other way than to talk to the human expert.
You handle hotel data every day, all day. You're like, when I think of you, I think of you're like Neo in the Matrix. You're just seeing the world as data, streams of data coming at you.
I was once for Halloween Keanu Reeves,
Not surprised. You still
but
are. Uh,
I went as the what was the series he did after he lost his wife and dog?
oh, John Wick.
Yes, I went as the John Wick character.
I thought you were gonna tell me you did like some kind of mashup where it's like I went as Keanu and I changed outfits throughout the evening to be different Keanu Reeves, which I think is a great idea because
It was so easy to do John Wick though.
it
Just dress
is.
in black.
His outfits over the years are very trench coat heavy. Once you get past Bill and Ted era, they're very trench coat heavy. Though I think it would be fun to like throw speed in there. That's a lot of work though to do five Keanu Reeves over the course of an evening. Maybe the strategy there is to maybe get a group and look, okay, everybody here pick which Keanu Reeves they want to be from the movie, and then you all show up at a party as Keanu Reeves. Anywho, this is what you and I really talk about when we're not doing this podcast. Um, so you're looking at data. Who are the hotel winners in 2025? Is anybody a winner in 2025? Is anybody making lemonade out of this storm of lemons?
Um, I think for the most part, everybody across the industry is just trying to mitigate volatility, right? Who the winners are the ones that win a battle of attrition and lose the least from what they expected the year to give. Uh, I'm unaware of any segment that has said life got better after Q1. Not a single kind of hotel.
And I wonder how accepting bosses are of all this talk. Like, what's that? What are those conversations like when you're sitting in there with, the CEO of a holding company that owns 20 hotels or 30 hotels or single hotel. And, it's the quarterly meeting. Everybody's going to come in. I wonder what that, I'm, my thoughts and prayers are with the sales teams on that, because
Yeah.
I think it's the kind of thing that everybody can kind of nod sagely and academically when they're reading the New York Times. But I'm sure when you're sitting in a sales meeting, it gets Goodfellas pretty fast. Where's my money? I don't care
Oh
what the
yeah.
market's doing. Where's my money? So I wonder how that dynamic is playing out in these rooms across
I
hotel
think
chains.
maybe it's a little too current events, but earnings calls are going on this week and last across the industry. And they do think that across the business right now, a lot of companies, most, if not all, have dropped their full year projection. Uh, and I think part of that is that there's a tolerance for it built into the marketplace. Like, we kind of, our stock already got hammered. Let's take down the expectation for the year because everybody expects it. So then we can come in at the end of the year, beat guidance, and maybe have some good wins. So I think there's some posturing going on that it may not be as bad as people are letting on with current batch of earnings calls. So I do think that there's maybe we're creating our own silver lining, if you will, but the voluntary volatility is inexcusable. And that just, I'm passionate about. We talked about it with Aaron Ryan. There's no reason a business shouldn't be able to look 6 months out and know the rules of the game. That is inexcusable. And until that stops, I don't think you're going to see anybody do other than what you're doing right now, which is say, this is mind blowingly stupid. We need to move forward knowing what the rules of the game are.
Okay, is anybody brewing lemonade? And if so, can I visit them and have some?
You may. You're welcome to go to Canada because they love that their demand is staying at home. Those hotels are doing just fine without sending their dollars, their Canadian loonies, over to us. So yeah, Canada's doing well. Instead of outbound business, it's staying domestic. There are similarly winners in Latin America. Mexican travel to the U.S. is down 7% for the year. Well, that's benefiting somebody either still in Mexico or somewhere else in the Caribbean, Latin American region. Latin American region is benefiting from Canadians who are flying over the US instead of stopping here. Intra-European travel, we saw this from Accor, doing quite well. As Western Europeans have decided by double-digit volumes not to come to the US this summer. Instead, they're traveling within Europe. So there are winners. It's just not here in the US.
Jeff, this is great. Let's do this very soon.
And we should do this again. I enjoy this.
Yeah, yeah. We should make a thing out of this. I'll talk to you soon.
Great talking to you.